What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Magic Dads podcast. My name is Rugley, joined here today by Pinty Het and look,
Heyo.
Tanner Lighting.
Talc.
Hey.
What's up, dudes?
How's it going?
Oh man,
Good.
another guest star.
Another special guest. You
No
are
suit
looking
this
at-
time.
You are looking at no suit. You are looking at the 2023 Lawnlander champion, Tanner Lighting. What's that
Yeah,
like?
Tanner-
Where's that sword at? Hold
Yeah,
on.
where's the sword? I was just gonna ask.
I've actually got it right next to me.
Where is the sword?
Yeah, I've got it right
Yes.
next to me.
This is amazing.
How does your wife feel about that? Like,
She thought that it was really cool.
Good.
So I ended up calling her in between every single round just to get
that's
a
amazing.
fresh mental reset.
Yeah, hell
Yep.
And yeah, so I called her after the finals, and I was just like, hey. So I got this to prove for my day.
Oh, that's amazing.
That was a long day for broadcast. That must have been a very long day to play.
2 game 4s and 1 game 5, all of which were very close.
Yeah.
Came down to 1 or 2 turns.
What is that? 13 games?
Yeah.
That's 13
Untimed
games.
too.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So your deck likes to go long.
Yeah.
We could talk a little bit about the deck. It's the 4-color Omnitiative deck.
Yeah, so that's what we are here to talk about today. What is Omnitiative? Of course, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you turn notifications on so that we get to annoy you every time we upload a video. There's a link to our Patreon campaign down in the description of this video. You can go there, check out all of our extra content. There's a lot of cool stuff up there. And with that out of the way, we can get into
Oh yeah.
the meat and potatoes of this episode. So we are going to talk about the 4-color Omnitiative deck that Tanner won the 2023 championship with. So Tanner, in your own words, please tell us, what is Omnitiative?
So it's a 4-color. You can play either more control-y or a mid-rangey pile, where you kind of just get to play the best cards in the format that aren't black. You get to play Minskin Boo, Timeless Heroes, Oko, Thief of Crowns, and Comet Stellar Pup all in the same deck. It's just always a good time, and plus you have you have the initiative to just get that extra little dopamine hit, and just try to control the game through that.
Yeah.
Omnitiative, of course, named after Omnath, not
Right,
Omni
because it's-
Omni Show.
Right. It's blue, white, red, green. So Sam's black.
You're pretty deep in all the colors too. There's no light splash necessarily. You're comfortable with hitting all 4 colors pretty hard.
Yeah. Most of that just being you're playing 4 or 5 triomes, just trying to get every single color, just play the best spells that you can.
Yeah, we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about the mana base specifically, actually, because I think it's really, really important to this archetype. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what it is. You're just playing the best cards in all 4 of those colors. Tanner's list is a bit heavier on the blue and the red, and then the green and the white are more of the splashy colors, but they're all within 10% of each other. They're all around about a quarter of the deck. So, it is quite literally just every one of your top decks is an insanely powerful spell.
Yeah, every single time you try to draw a card, you just hope that it is an absolute bomb that just changes the game's face on its head.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny looking at this list how many of these cards were printed in the last 4 years, 5 years.
There's an absurd number of things that have been printed specifically since Eldraine, the original Eldraine set.
I'm looking through this and it's the old cards are Tarmogoyf. I don't know what that is.
Let me pull Tanner's deck list up on the screen right now. So, holy cow, you got a Banshee up there? What the? Here is Tanner's deck list. Now, so this is Tanner's deck from the championship. Tanner did say in the pregame that the deck list has changed a little bit since then. And you'll see down there at the bottom that as of now, this deck list that was played in the championship is 11 points. So, and that's what I want to start with. I want to start with talking about the point spread in this deck. So, we had mentioned that this is just like very, very powerful cards dot deck, and so you're using these the triple mock spread to power out these powerful 2, 3, and 4 drops, right?
Yeah.
And in conjunction with, you've got like a few mana dorks in Birds of Paradise, Delighted Halfling, and Noble Hierarch, but you're not super heavy on that. Another thing is like you don't have any soul lands. There's no Ancient Tomb, there's no City of Traders, anything like that, because obviously when you're playing 4 colors and you've got multiple instances of double pipped cards, you don't want to get stuck with like missing one of your colors even though you have an Ancient Tomb or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it, one would think that you might need a little bit more to power this out than the 3 mana dorks and the 3 Moxen. That's only 6 cards, 6% of your deck. You only have one of those in your hand, like what, one in every 3 or 4 games, something like that.
Yeah. So I am only on those just because for this tournament specifically, I was really high on Nissa Resurgent Animus.
Okay.
Just as a way to find any of the elementals that were really good. It actually was one of the cards that ended up winning me the final against Goblins, being able to like, find a Fury super early, find a Solitude and stuff. Yeah. Otherwise, like some lists would be on Deathrite Shaman or any number of the elves.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just like having the Birds of Paradise and the Delighted Halfling both able to produce any color of mana were really nice. Delighted Halfling having the text that spells can't be countered is kind of bonkers.
Yeah. So maybe specifically for the championship, since going into it knowing that it's going to be best of 5 games, you're going to be playing a lot of really, really long games, cutting some of those mana dorks and just knowing that you're going to hit your land drops naturally and still be able to play these super powerful spells.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I didn't say it before, but I guess you also have a Chrome Mox, so there's technically 7 of these.
Yeah, that seems like an interesting inclusion, especially you're I don't know how good that is as fast mana, but it definitely feels like it fills in some gaps for hitting like drops if you need them.
Yeah, the majority of the deck really starts to get going around 3 or 4 mana. So being able to like drop one of the bombs super early, most people just can't deal with it.
Yep. Yeah.
Also, putting a multicolored card underneath a Chrome Mox seems, especially in this deck, you have all of these options to do it. In most decks, it's like 1 or 2 colors, probably only fixing for 1. In your deck, it feels like you can fix for 2 or more pretty normally.
Yeah.
So you're pretty firmly in this deck wants Moxen, right?
I think it does, yes, just because of how if it's going too slow, sometimes people can just go underneath you, and just before you get to actually drop one of your 3 or 4 drops that ends the game, they can just whittle your life total down.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've seen versions of this deck that play lots of different point spreads. With all 4 of the colors, you get access to all of the non-black pointed cards. So like I've seen lists that have recall spreads. I've seen lists that have natural order spreads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The world is kind of your oyster, right?
Yeah, it's open.
I like the Moxen in this deck. And once again, it's just because it just powers out those super powerful cards really, really quickly. So if you are playing a triple mock spread, that means you get 1 more point. For this tournament, 4th Aerlingus was not pointed yet. So you had the triple mox and the True Name Nemesis, which True Name Nemesis is it's so good in these like mid-range mirrors, because it's nearly impossible for a lot of these decks to kill.
Yeah, nobody's running Wraths anymore. It's 2024. It was 2023.
So now that 4th Aerlingus has picked up a point, what are your options now?
Just because of how powerful Fourth Earlingus is of a card, I am considering dropping True Name. Although it's like it can be really good, it's just a creature that not many people can deal with. It Fourth Earlingus just swings so many games. Being able to get multiple creatures all with haste that ends up getting you the monarchy, I think it's just a more valuable spot
It's kind of a
for that
nuts
last
top
point.
deck.
Yeah,
Like it scales throughout the game. It's pretty much everywhere you want to be. Even if you're not swinging with those creatures, you're suddenly making a wall of blockers, like worst case scenario, right?
yeah, and it like late into the game, it can just be a top deck that can just win you the game on the spot. While True Name, like say you draw it on like turn 5 or 6, you just like playing a True Name. Sometimes you can still just die, but often just like dropping a Fourth Earlingus for 5 or 6, getting that many 2/2s with trample and haste for whatever reason, can
Why
just
do they have
straight up win you the
trample?
game.
Why do they have trample?
I, that's a really good question.
They really push that card.
Yeah, I assume because it's for commander decks and just
Oh
trying
yeah,
to, yeah,
right,
just trying to
commander.
get one creature to hit to get you the monarch.
I agree that Fourth Erlingus is quite a bit more powerful than True Name Nemesis. Um, are there any other considerations though? Are there any other one-pointed cards you've ever wanted to test out? Because there's a number of things that have, dropped points and are now just 1 points that you could fit in here.
I've considered it in the more control-y style deck where you're playing just like more counter spells and card advantage. I think that Mystical Tutor is really good, just being able to find in like the Jeskai decks that are running it, being able to find your Terminus or any of your other miracle spells
Sure.
that you can just set up your top deck. It can just game.
When I say people aren't playing board wipes, I don't mean Terminus. You can still play Terminus. Interestingly, you are playing a couple cards that are not yet pointed that I feel like, and everybody sort of has been looking at for a while at being potentially pointed, specifically Minskin Boo and White Plume.
Yeah.
These cards are like right on the cusp, and for a lot of players, like over the edge of pointing. We're kind of looking at the council going, when, not if.
Yeah, Minsc and Boo is it just wins you the game almost by itself. It's
You can
a
just fling
highly
things with
impactful
it.
player. Yeah,
Like immediately, you can just fling stuff with it and win the game.
yeah.
That's wild to me.
And the fact that if you do end up just like flinging your hamster, you get to draw cards for whatever reason in green and red.
Yeah, that doesn't really make any sense at all. Like worst case scenario, it immediately makes something to defend itself.
Yeah,
That's a
and
4/4.
yeah, a 4/4 with haste and trample again.
Yeah. And then the next turn it turns into a 7/7, and then the next turn your opponent is dead. Because you
Yeah,
get to fling a 7 power creature and draw 7 cards.
it also makes the hamster back at your upkeep, which is kind
Yeah.
of push for a green red card that was like designed for commander.
Yeah, it just keeps making the hamster over and over and over and over again.
Speaking
Yeah.
of 4 mana planeswalkers, you are also on the good dog.
Oh yeah, the good dog actually. Uh, this is the best that the good dog has ever done for me.
Mm.
Um, in my games with Travis in the semifinals, Comet ended up coming up multiple times. It ended up winning me a game against Luke, just making squirrels over and over again for me to take back the initiative, for me to defend the initiative. Um,
Again,
and
making things with haste. That's so wild
yeah,
to me.
yeah, it's really weird. And then I've only ever rolled a 6 one time, and it was against Travis in the semifinals. And it ended up winning me the game because I just ended up getting squirrels and then being able to just lava axe him.
I
Everybody has stories of rolling like 6/6s or something.
Sidetrack, but Jeremiah and I both had Comet in our deck. Let's see, in the I think it was the second week of the Maple Cup, and in one game he rolled 5 6s,
There it is.
with Comet, and then in the next game,
Yep.
I rolled 4 6s.
You absolute monsters.
Yeah, it's just another card that if you get really lucky, it can just win you the game by itself.
Yep. It's funny that like your planeswalkers generally have this like all the planeswalkers you have are either like incredibly powerful reactively or incredibly powerful proactively. Like you're playing Teferi, which obviously so good against any kind of control decks. Anything that wants to play on your turn just shuts them down, right? They have to play at sorcery speed just like everybody else. Renin 6, absolutely busted card. They don't get to play X1s ever again.
They don't get
And
to
you
play
get to make your land drops.
Yeah, you get to make your land drops with a fetch land over and over again,
yeah.
and just fix all of the mana in your 4-color deck.
Yeah, on turn 2, you just get to start.
Ridden 6, I think, is one of the most important cards as
Yeah.
far as the mana base is concerned.
And then also, just Oko, Comet, and Minskinbu are easily 3 of the most powerful planeswalkers, I think, in the format right now. Like, Oko was a mistake. Like, that's just a design mistake of a card. And Minskinbu and Comet just make themselves, like, turn themselves into an army.
Yeah,
over enough time.
There are so many cards in this deck that just immediately demand an answer, and unfortunately, there aren't any decks that have enough answers at all.
Yeah, you sort of need
your opponent. Your opponent can have like counter magic or removal or destroy planeswalker cards. Like they're gonna run out of those eventually.
Yeah,
you're just gonna keep drawing heat off the top of the deck.
Yeah, and Comet lets you rebuy them too. Like
yes.
I know it's random, but it'll just get those back too.
Yeah, it's so weird that being able to regrowth something with mana value 2 or less is kind of the worst mode on the card.
Yeah, what cards are 2 mana or less? All the worst ones, right?
Oh yeah, you've got your lightning bolts and all of your lands and
I don't know, man. Spellseeker seems like a bad card. Only get mana value 2 or less.
Additionally, you have a slurry of other like legendary creatures that are just super powerful.
Oh right.
Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer, Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel. We actually talked about this card a bunch when we in our episode with Luke.
Yep.
You've got the Nissa Resurgent Animus that you had already mentioned. Lelia, Blade Reforged. We all know how Blake feels about that card. Thalia, Heretic Cathar. Going up the curve, you've got Aragorn, King of Gondor. That card is not okay.
No, another Monarch card.
Yeah, it just makes all of your stuff unblockable, basically.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? What could ever go wrong there?
Yeah, once again, a 4-mana card that can win the game by itself at any point in the game.
Yeah, the crux of the deck is that any of these cards on their own, if drawn, which you do, you're just like, okay, well, this requires an immediate answer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a good, there's mana base, there's enablers, which is about, 30% of the deck. And then the rest of the deck requires answers cards.
Yeah, it's just straight gas. It's really hard to just not draw the right cards.
Yeah.
Just because
right.
Almost everything in your entire deck answers what your opponent is doing and can put you ahead.
Yeah, I love the Stifle. Didn't you win a game by stifling an initiative trigger or something? I seem to maybe that was somebody else.
I ended up stifling an initiative trigger, and then he just ended up ephemerating. No, it was the Tashana's Tidebinder that ended up winning me.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yes, against Sean.
Tidebinder.
Yeah, a couple tech choices, especially for my matchup with Luke. Just with Seeker Walk, him just jamming a Spell Seeker, I need to make sure that he can't just go find a Time Walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it seems pretty good, and the fact that it's on a body that you can recur is just
another
why
thing,
they give it 3 power?
That Comet can get back.
Oh yeah. the
other tech choices, I think, like the Brotherhood thing specifically. That card is pretty good against both Mitch and Travis.
The way that I looked at it, I knew that Travis was probably on what he was comfortable with. Same with Mitch, and
I guess it's also really good against Sean too, right?
Yeah, it's really good against like go wide decks and artifact decks specifically.
Yeah.
Luke, I thought that it would be pretty good just because he
Right.
just plays a lot of dorks, plays a lot of pretty
Fair
low
bit.
toughness creatures.
Mhm.
And then I assume Jake would be on kind of just like an initiative style, go wide, just like play fast deck like he was when I played him earlier in the year. So I just thought that it was a pretty decent tech choice, just like being able to wrath entire boards
Yeah.
because
I agree.
You knew your first round matchup, right?
Yeah.
Who was it against? It was against Luke, right?
It was against Luke. Yep.
Yeah, the ability to kind of tech around. I know most players kind of took that into consideration.
If you can break up Luke's infinite combo, you're just playing a mid-range mirror, and your deck is way better than his.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
that's the issue most mid-range decks have.
Mentality going into it, I think it's great strategy, and you've got multiple ways to do that. We got ways to exile the graveyard. You've got like Leyline Binding, in addition to obviously Path to Exile, Source Plowshares. And then you got a couple of counter spells too. Not a ton of counter magic in this deck, but you do have the Force of Will, the Spell Pierce, the Evasive Action, the Force of Negation. Those are all things that will answer Luke's combo pretty easily.
It's interesting. You're not on Daze. That's interesting. That's an interesting choice.
It's kind of like a gotcha card. I'm also not on like regular counter spell.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Just because I thought that, like in my matchup specifically for this, I thought that I would just like want to commit creatures to the board and just try to go under people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also in the 4-color decks, I haven't liked those double pipped counter spells specifically. I don't know what it is. It's just like it seems like if you're prioritizing fetching double blue mana so that you can counter something, it would be better to just commit a creature to the board, like you said.
Yeah.
That's a little less taxing on the mana base. You can counter a spell all you want, but like forcing them to have an answer for your thing, I think is just a better strategy in general.
Yeah.
So that being said, that's a nice segue into this conversation that we need to have about this mana base. So the first thing that I want to point out is the number of mana sources. So you have 34 total mana sources, not including Moxen or the Mana Dorks. So this is just lands. You've got 34 lands. There are a number of them that only make one color of mana. So you've got the Beseiju, you've got the basic lands, obviously, and then you also have an Otawara and a what was the other one? Oh, a Caracas.
Right, which is it does produce mana, but it also does the other thing.
So yes, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 lands that only produce one color of mana.
Yep. The way that I see it, Beseiju and Otawara are lands, but I mostly use them for their second ability.
Spell first.
Yeah, it's basically an uncounterable spell.
Yeah. I agree.
And like playing a Beseiju in your lands is better than just like playing a Disenchant in your deck because like if you draw Beseiju early in the game, it can just be a green source.
Yep.
And doesn't just like sit dead in your hand. Otawara is really good at just bouncing any troublesome permanent.
Yep.
And then Caracas is just good in just like kind of legend mirrors.
It's good against Minsc and Boo. I think Caracas is the best.
Oh yeah.
It's good against Minsc and Boo. It ended up bouncing my Malcolm in one of the games.
Right.
Yeah, you can protect your legendaries with it.
I really like the defensive mode of Caracas in this deck specifically. You have so many legendary creatures, and like, sure, you probably don't want to stare down a Caracas on the other side of the battlefield, but when you have one on your side of the battlefield, it makes everything so much better, especially when you have things like Aragorn that you can use to retake the initiative, Uro that you can use to gain 3 life and draw a card, Omnath that you could use to draw a card, and also save your creature from removal spells. It's like, I don't know, if your opponent tries to use a removal spell on it, you get to just 1-for-0 them for free.
Yeah. I don't know, man. If they're Caracasing your Aragorn every turn, I don't think you mind replaying that thing. Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, you can just Caracas your thing for no reason at all, and
Yeah.
do it again. You don't even need to be protecting it.
I mean, you're gonna make those land drops anyway. Might as well replay your Omneth.
So as far as the rest of the mana base goes, you've got the triomes, obviously, and then you've got several dual lands, but you have a really nice mix going on. It's very subtle. You have to really look to find it, but you've got the original duels. You have all 6 of them that you can play, right?
Hmm.
But then as far as like shocked lands go, you only have 3 that I can see. You have a Sacred Foundry, a Steam Vents, and a Breeding Pool. Right?
And Hallowed Fountain.
Oh, there is Owlet Fountain too. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're eschewing the what is it? The Stomping Ground and the Temple Garden.
Yep.
I can understand that. It feels like you're not like you need red and green together a lot of the time. So having a land that produces red or green is like not the greatest.
Yeah, and just having like an extra blue white source if I'm playing more like of a slower like control-y type game with Hallowed Fountain. Like I can just always opt for that if I already have my Tundra, or
Yeah.
if I need to use like any of the like a blue spell and a white spell for a turn.
Then you have kind of in place of those, you've got a Botanical Sanctum and a Spire Bluff Canal.
Yeah, just 2 fast lands that I think just like I think that getting blue really early in a game is really good just because of all of my cantrips
Yep.
and because all of my counter spells are usually like 2 mana. Just like the earlier in the game it is, the better it is for those 2, and that's why I have them in there.
Yeah. No, I like
Man.
it a lot. I think this is an excellent mix.
Yeah. The amount of thought that is real clear in the mana base, like the considerations and sort of the love that you've shown in your lands, is far beyond what I think most people. I feel like when people build their mana bases, a lot of the time they're just like, okay, starting with A, then B, then C. Whereas you're like, what do I need on turn 1?
Mhm.
What do I need on turn 2? Where can I make
There's definitely a
considerations?
lot of careful consideration
Yeah.
in here. And then the part I think about your mana base that shocked me the most is you're only playing the Mana Confluence.
Mhm.
You don't have City of Brass. You don't have Reflecting Pool, which both of those are very very common in these 4-color mana bases. You see those 2 cards a lot.
I figure just my Mana Confluence over City of Brass. I figure 1 pain source is enough, especially if you don't get a particularly aggressive hand. You can just kind of end up damaging yourself over time and just like not being exactly where you want to be, especially in like aggressive matchups.
I totally agree.
Man, mono red is terrifying.
The second most shocking thing is that you are playing a basic forest, island, and mountain, but you are not playing a basic plains.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of like I don't know. I feel like white was the color that I lacked the most.
It is the least percentage.
Yeah. Usually, like I'm going and getting a triome on turn 1, and like almost all of my triomes produce white, so I didn't think that I needed just that 4th extra basic.
Sure.
That's fair.
And just having like fetchable, like in case all my duels are gone for whatever reason, I don't have to shock for a particular color that I need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You also have a prismatic vista,
Yeah.
which is like you have 3 basics and a prismatic vista, no fear at all.
Yeah.
I guess with Ren and 6, you're like it just lets you have an additional opportunity to replay fetch out. So you effectively get to be on 11 of these lands that let you continue to make your 11 fetches over 10 fetches is just better. That's more.
Yeah,
11
and
more.
more colors, more fixing. It's
Yeah.
just easier to make all of the colors that you need for all the cards in your hand.
Yeah.
I like playing all the fetches. So I think we've talked about most of the deck. Are there any? I'm going to bring it back up to our faces. Hello, there we are. Are there any changes? See, it's been about 2 months since you played this deck. Are there any changes that you would be looking to make? I know we talked about some of these flex slots in here were occupied by things that you thought would be good for this tournament specifically. So you've got a little bit of wiggle room in there. Has anything come out, from the most recent sets that really sparks your interest? Did you want to try out in this deck, or?
I really want to try MtG, Seneschal of the Sun. That card seems pretty good. Just to
It's all right.
It lets you redraw cards and give things +1/+1 and trample.
Why? Why trample?
Why trample once again?
Design mistakes.
Other than that, I've just kind of been looking around. Ledger Shredder, I'm thinking about putting back in.
Oh, okay.
And then for this tournament specifically, because I wasn't sure with how aggressive everybody was being, I ended up taking out Caves of Chaos Adventurer.
Okay.
Because I felt like an extra initiative creature wasn't always what I want to draw.
Right. You had said that when we were talking to you after the tournament, that you just you had those cards in your hand against Sean, and you just chose not to play them because they're actively bad in the matchup.
Yeah, he's just so good at taking it back. Same with Luke, with how low to the ground he can be, going wide. Same with Mitch. Just taking out a couple of those cards just because I like the field in general was better at taking the initiative back.
I think there's also something to be said, especially against Luke, about being the person to play the second initiative card. Because a lot of the times you will clog up the board, and then whoever plays the second one will maintain that initiative. Like the first person who plays it takes it, and then the second person goes, "Okay, great, let's go ahead and do that."
It's mine now.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. Also, because Luke has so many clone effects, he can just copy my creature or ephemerate his creature.
We have spent a lot of time talking about Luke's clone effects.
Yeah.
All right, sick, man. Anything else you want to say about this deck, or I don't know, anything at all?
Not really. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, no, we
absolutely.
really
It's always
appreciate
been a
having you
good
on.
time. Yeah, I can't always make it down to Ankeny, but I know at least for the quarterly tournaments that I'll always be there. It's always a good time.
Excellent.
It's always a family reunion. It feels like we get all of our friends
feel
together.
more like a family reunion or a party than a Magic tournament.
Yeah, there's just happens to be Magic there. We all just kind of hang out, have fun.
Yeah, it's always a good time.
Yeah, I'm excited. We'll see you in March then.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right.
All right, Tanner. Well, we appreciate you coming on the Magic Dads podcast today, and we just want to remind you that
We're proud of you.
bye.
Later.